Hi folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So today folks, I've got a very interesting fuzz pedal to show you. And I should start this video by saying this isn't a pedal that I've personally bought. It's been lent to me by my buddy Nick Williams, who also builds amazing fuzz pedals himself. This here is the Boss TB-2w Tonebender. And this is a pedal that was released in very limited numbers about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's since become known for a lot of good, but some also less good reasons. Because, as many of you will know, the Tonebender is one of the original fuzz pedals. It was designed by a chap called Gary Hurst in the UK in the mid-60s, and it was marketed through a shop in London called MkII's. And as I understand it, MkII's isn't there anymore in terms of a brick-and-mortar shop in London, but the brand still exists, and they still make Tonebenders under their original Sola Sound brand, and put them out online. And they also have access to a lot of the original pedal builders, so they put out some really big money Tonebender recreations, but built by the original people. So they have the authenticity, they have the trademark, they're allowed to call their pedals Tonebenders rather than Mark II type pedals or whatever other people call them. So they're a very interesting, authentic, original brand. So when they teamed up with Boss, I think they are the biggest pedal manufacturer in the world, this isn't a collaboration that many people ever saw coming, because there was only 3,000 of these pedals made-ish, which for Boss is absolutely minuscule, but for MkII's and for a Tonebender that uses hand-selected new old stock Germanium transistors, 3,000 is a massive production run. So there's some interesting kind of comparisons between the scales of production of the two companies there. But this, as I understand it, is the first ever collaboration between Sola Sound and another pedal manufacturer. So it's a very interesting pedal, and as I said, it was made in pretty limited numbers. But it's also become pretty well known for being hoovered up by scalpers and instantly sold for many times what they originally sold for online. There's a lot of hardcore Boss collectors out there. The Tonebender isn't necessarily a cheap circuit to produce in its own right, especially with new old stock Germanium transistors in it. So it's definitely become more of a collector's item, and arguably a little bit hyped because it's a Boss pedal, it's a MkIII Sola Sound pedal, and it's a Tonebender. So it's kind of not a pedal you see on many people's pedal boards, either because people don't own them, or if they do own them, they're generally kept in the box in a cupboard because they're probably only going to appreciate in value. But anyway, this is sonically a very accurate reproduction of one of MkII's original Tonebenders they have in their collection. So it has those new old stock Germanium transistors in there, but there's a few Bossisms in there as well. So the first is on the top here. The original Tonebenders were buffered bypass pedals, but you also get a true bypass option on the switch. So if you have this pedal on your pedal board, not many people do, and you have it before another fuzz or a range master, something like that, you can set it to true bypass and it's not going to cause any problems. You can of course also run it on a standard 9-volt power supply, whereas the originals were battery only. I'm going to run this on a battery today because it tends to be how Germanium fuzzers sound their best, and also this is not my pedal and it's very expensive, so I don't want to risk plugging a power supply into this thing. But you also get this battery switch in the middle here. So you can run it at the standard 9 volts, or you can starve the transistors of a little bit of voltage at 7 volts, or give them a little bit more than they're used to at 12. So to me, that switch doesn't really change the level of fuzz too much, but it does give you a slightly different voicing, and it definitely changes the feel under the fingers. At the higher voltages, it's definitely a little bit more saggy and compressed. But today, what I want to do is put this pedal through its paces to see whether we like how it sounds, does it sound like an authentic Mark II, and answer the question, is it overhyped because of who made it, or is it worth the hype of sounding absolutely glorious? So first and foremost, I'm going to use a Telecaster into a Marshall type amp, which is kind of the go-to happy place for a Mark II Tonebender, especially down because of the people that famously use this circuit. But at the end, I'm going to use some Humbuckers into a slightly crunchy Blackface Fender type amp, just to see how we get on with that and how this interacts with that particular circuit. So without further ado, folks, here we go. are, folks. Now, please do comment underneath, let me know what you thought of this pedal today. Which guitar and amp did you prefer it with? Is this the best sounding Mark II you've ever heard, or just another tone bender? I love chatting nerdy guitar stuff with you folks down in the comment section. Now, I think there's two ways of looking at this pedal today. Firstly, is this an authentic Mark II tone bender? And you have to say, in pretty much every conceivable way, yes, absolutely. It has Sola Sound on the front. It's called tone bender, which only MkII's are actually allowed to do. It's in the sort of hammered metal enclosure. So all the kind of behind the scenes stuff that doesn't affect how the pedal sounds, of course, but it adds to the pedigree and the authenticity. Yes, it is completely authentic in that regard. And sonically, especially in the 9-volt mode, it really does sound like a classic Mark II tone bender. It cleans up in the same way. It has the same feel under the fingers. So it definitely is up there with the originals in terms of sounding right. So there's so many things about this pedal that are authentic Mark II. Of course, it has the mod cons that Boss have kind of sprinkled on there: power supply, true bypass if you want it, and the battery voltage selector. So it's a little bit modified from the originals, but sonically and in terms of its pedigree, yes, it's absolutely authentic. And I really like the battery switch, by the way. At 7 volts, it's kind of tighter in the low end and a bit kind of spittier and more cutting. At 12 volts, it's really saggy and rounded up top and super thick and compressed under the fingers. It's very squishy to play. And of course, 9 volts in the middle is a happy medium of the two. So it doesn't really change the level of fuzz too much, but it definitely gives you 3 different voices and different behaviours. And I also really like that with the level control all the way up, it's still a little bit below Unity, which is how the originals were. And I really like that Boss haven't kind of fixed that and made Unity 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock. They've kind of kept that as it was. So I really like that. And again, that just adds to the authenticity of this pedal. So I really, really like it. It sounds fantastic. But I think there's also another way to look at this, which is it worth the hype? Yes, it's Sola Sound. Yes, it's Boss that are known for their bulletproof reliability. And yes, it's a collector's item that was expensive to begin with, and on the second-hand market is even more expensive now. Is it kind of living up to that? And just in my personal opinion, yes and no, I think. I think it sounds right, it sounds authentic, it sounds great, but so do other pedals out there. And I personally have Mark II tone benders here that I prefer over this. So that might be because they sound different to the originals and this sounds authentic and I prefer the slightly adapted version. I'm not entirely sure because I don't have an original here to compare any of these pedals to. But it sounds great, but it doesn't sound worlds apart from anything else I've ever played or have here in this room. It's just a different interpretation of that sound to me. So if you missed out on the initial 3,000 of these, and if you're not willing to pay the huge prices on eBay or Reverb, are you missing out on the ultimate Mark II experience? And if you play any other pedal, you're not actually getting a real tone bender sound? No, not really. It's a good pedal, but it's not stratospheric in terms of being worlds apart from everything else. But those are just my thoughts, folks. I love hearing yours, so please do comment underneath and let me know what you thought of this Sola Sound and Boss collaboration today. So thank you ever so much for watching, folks. I hope this video was interesting and useful for you. Please do carry on subscribing. I know I always say it, but it makes a big difference when you hit subscribe. And I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.